Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan. I'm the mind behind Make More Capital, and today we're going to recap this week in cannabis news from September 6th to the 12th. Now, before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learn something, please just leave a like on it as it really helps out my channel. And then, of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos. Then there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so that you can watch episodes to learn about the evolution of the industry over time, identify top companies that you keep seeing pop up and that you think will do well in the long run, and you can take advantage whenever you're ready. Now, that was another very painful week, especially for inexperienced investors. However, it's very important to take a step back and zoom out to see where we actually are in the big picture, because as much as it looks terrible and that the prices will keep falling, that these companies are worth nothing, the fact is nothing on the ground has changed, and these companies are still executing and growing. So the thesis remains the same for me. And I want to share because I honestly believe that in the big picture of, history and what will be the US bull run, which is obviously currently just unfolding before our eyes in real time, this is where I seriously believe we are in the US chart. And I want to use this as an example to show you, if we look at the US chart, which is the American Cannabis Operator Index, and we zoom out to 10 years, and I just want to scroll down because hopefully it'll share both the chart and me. In February, although new MSOs that obviously are the ones that are, the premier top ones, hit all-time highs, they did not even surpass the overall highs that the US market saw in 2019. So if we actually look at this and say, oh, okay, interesting, then we zoom back out, this is where I see the US and, this is where I see the February run. We're kind of basically in this little area, and then we see the big sell-off that we've gone through the 7 months. If we look at history, this started we say the sell-off started in May, lasted all the way until, September, August, July, September. So, that was 3-4 months. We've gone through 7 months. That feels painful, but ultimately, I do believe that in the coming 6 to 12 months, we are set up for, say, a parabolic run such as that. And that is what I'm holding out for. That's why I bought more shares on Friday. I can show you here. I have made a portfolio update, so I now have over 3,000 shares. And you're probably looking here going, but Jordan, look, your money's in the red. You don't lose unless you sell for a loss, and I'm confident and I'm happy to wait because I do believe that we are here, seriously, and that we are heading in towards this, the US version. I could be wrong, and it just could take longer. That's also possible too, which is just why you have to plan accordingly. But using this, I want to share with, in February, I only had maybe 1,100 or 1,400 shares of Cresco, and I was like, yeah, I want the money now. I want to double all this. But future me now in September is a lot wiser and much more content with the fact that I've just been able to accumulate my shares. And now it's really, again, just the waiting game because, again, I think we're set up, and it's worth remembering that safe language is in that minibus bill, which is expected to pass September 30th. And so as much as, again, it feels like the world is ending, I don't believe it is. And that's why I bought more on Friday. So I just wanted to share this perspective with you. Again, this is just what I think. I could be wrong. And obviously in the future, if I'm wrong, I'm going to have to change my plans accordingly. However, I just wanted to share this with you because, if we look at the US chart, it's like we ain't seen nothing yet. And this is the 10-year zoom out. So just imagine if we were to place ourselves in 2030 in the future and look back at now. Are you trying to tell me that the Canadian bull run outdid the eventual US bull run? Not a chance. The US bull run is going to be, I think, even a lot bigger than the Canadian one. And I think we're just getting set up for it. And that's seriously what I think. And so again, this channel is not about pumping or making quick money. This is about education because this is a generational opportunity. And if you play it right and ultimately just try to accumulate as many more shares as possible, the more you invest, the more you can ultimately make in time, as long as we see this. And based on history, I just don't think we're not going to see this at some point. Once SAFE passes, that could be the unlock, open the floodgates so that those big investors with U.S. capital, with trillions of dollars, like Boris said, flip of the light switch, they can get in. Now again, I'm not trying to say this as this is wishful thinking. This is just using history and the facts that I'm going to relay all the way throughout this episode to show where we are heading and what I believe. So just wanted to show you a few things. The Intelligent Investor Chapter 7 as well. Finally started a position in Trulieve at 50% down from all-time highs, and will continue to add through the fall. So this is a post from someone on Twitter. They're quoting growth at value prices, but what they're showing is a very good excerpt from this book, The Intelligent Investor. And I want to let you know that I have a PDF copy of this book. I've read it twice. I haven't read it this year. I probably should have. Mind you, again, I'm not too worried because I've read the book and I've gone through this before with Afria. But if you want a copy of this, please send me an email at makemorecapital@gmail.com just saying, hey, I would love a PDF copy, and I will send this to you. Because if you read this book, the difference between a calm investor and one that's freaking out is likely one that's read this book a few times and tried to digest the knowledge. So, but from page 175, you can see it highlighted there, but I'll read it from the book. The underlying factor here is the tendency of the security markets to undervalue issues that are involved in any sort of complicated legal proceedings. An old Wall Street motto has been never buy into a lawsuit. This may be sound advice to the speculator seeking quick action on his holdings, but the adoption of this attitude by the general public is bound to create bargain opportunities in the securities affected by it, since the prejudice against them holds their prices down to unduly low levels. So it seems to be a prejudice against them that holds prices down. And this is also just from page 174. You probably can't see this, but it says special situations. And that's why I think this is a very special situation too. Also because the discrepancy between federal and state law, which is likely going to be cleared in time. But again, so if you want a copy of that, please send me an email. I will be happy to send it to you. And just one more reference from Warren Buffett. And this was written by Ben Graham, who was Warren Buffett's mentor at Columbia, I believe is the school he went to back in the day, long time ago. But I will tell you how to become, I like to think of it, wealthy as opposed to rich. Close the door. Be fearful when others are greedy, which means be afraid when like the S&P and the markets are hitting all-time highs, greedy, but be greedy, buy when others are fearful. When MSOs are leaking red and it looks like there's blood on the streets and people are panicking, and in the short term it looks like it's going to zero, because it's not really going to do that in the long run. And so that's why I chose to be greedy while others are fearful on Friday. And I just hope if you didn't really understand this quote before, you definitely understand it now, because it's a very powerful one and it fits into this context perfectly. So let's jump into it. Akerna report Friday ahead of Labor Day weekend grossed $90.1 million in cannabis sales. Business intelligence from Akerna shows that Friday, September 3rd was the second largest grossing sales day of 2021, bringing in $90.1 million in national retail cannabis sales. The top selling day of the year was of course April 20th, the unofficial cannabis holiday, and the Friday before the 4th of July was previously the second highest day, but the Labor Day sales actually surpassed 4th of July, so that's pretty impressive. Throughout the long Labor Day weekend, September 3rd to 6th, a total of $234.8 million in sales was brought in. Friday saw $90.1 million, Saturday saw $63.8 million, Sunday saw $42.1 million, and Monday saw a total of $38.8 million. So it's very impressive, and this all obviously kind of went under the radar. No one was expecting, or I didn't end up getting a preview of one of Akerna's articles, but this is great. So if you want to see the highlights for Labor Day weekend, sales by category, ultimately showing us that Americans want more cannabis, and if we follow the consumer behavior, I think the valuations will follow in time. On top of that, we've got a top cannabis brands for the first half of 2020 breakdown from BDSA, which is an analytics company that covers cannabis. And, well, MSOs and vape brands dominate BDSA's top first half of 2021 cannabis brands list. As you can see, introducing the top selling brands, number 1, Cresco Cannabis. Love to see that as a Cresco shareholder, and although the share price is falling, I know the company continues to execute, and they're the number 1 wholesaler. And so, yeah, that's why I ended up buying more on Friday too. Rhythm, that is Green Thumb, I believe. Stizzy, I don't know who they are. Select Oil, that's Curaleaf. And Raw Garden, I believe, is a California-based brand alone. But Leading Brands list has laid out a clear trend of multi-state operators and vape brands dominating the rankings. And so if we take a look, we can see for every single state. In Arizona, the top brand was Timeless Vapes. In California, it was Stizzy. In Colorado, it was Wana Edibles. In Illinois, it was Cresco Cannabis. In Massachusetts, it was Rhythm. In Maryland, Curio Wellness. In Nevada, it was Cookies. In Oregon, it was Buddies. And in Pennsylvania, it was Cresco Cannabis again. While they also have categories down here, so we can see for flower, Rhythm took the top spot. For pre-rolls, Jeter, Vape, Stizzy, beverages, Keef Cola, Dabbables, which is, I don't know what that is, but that sounds awesome. Cresco Cannabis, Infused Goods, Big Pete's Treats, Gummies, Wild, Tinctures, Care by Design, Pills, 1906, and Typicals, Mary's Medicinals. And also, if you want to know who owns these brands, you can typically type in the name and then Google who owns brand that name, and then you can find out who the owner is. But so obviously you can read more about Cresco, Rhythm, the brand specifically, not Stizzy, unfortunately, Select Oil, and Raw Garden on here. But yeah, that was great to see. So thank you, Kush Daddy, for sharing this information, because obviously this is the sort of thing that we like to see as more reassurance. Because sure, you can focus on the last 6 months or what's happening today, but ultimately, if you want to be a successful investor, you've got to focus on consumer behavior and what's going to happen in the next 6 months and what's unfolding. So just wanted to show that. I also found this out. There's shortdata.ca where we can actually find out what Canadian hedge funds or Canadian institutions are shorting some companies. And if we look here, we can see the TSX, which is the Toronto Stock Exchange, the TSX Venture, and then the Canadian Securities Exchange, which is our version of the over-the-counter market. So once MSOs in the U.S. can uplist, once cannabis is decriminalized or federally legalized, the TSX is like the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange. That's our biggest exchange in Canada. The CSE is like the over-the-counter. That's where you don't want to necessarily have to be. But regardless, this is, again, the reason for the discrepancy and the big opportunity. And if we look at here, the Canadian Securities Exchange, look at the top shorted companies: Trulieve Cannabis Corp, Green Thumb, Curaleaf, Cresco, Verano, TerraSend, Air, Jushi, MedMen, Harvest, Planet 13. It's mostly cannabis stocks. And apparently naked shorting is legal in Canada, which it 100% shouldn't be, but this is sort of the shenanigans that goes on behind the scenes that us retail aren't exposed to. So let's just say a Canadian hedge fund wants to short due to the US inaction in Congress, and they figure, well, we can short until some sort of action happens, so let's put the pressure on really big. And let's say a Canadian hedge fund calls their broker and they say, hey, we want to borrow millions of shares. Apparently they can do that, and then once they get the shares, they can just start to sell them in the open market and waste time, and then slowly start to buy them back when they decide to cover, when that light switch gets flipped. Now, and if that is the case, a lot of the share price decline that we're seeing is not retail selling, but that could be the shorts doing exactly this. So again, it almost seems as if this has just become psychological warfare between those that understand investing and those don't. And of course, if you sell to this pressure, it's sort of like the shorts winning and you sadly, taking that loss. So, it seems like we are in war right now, and, when we're in hell, what we got to do is just keep going. So hopefully I can lead us through the trenches into the promised land. Now, obviously, this is speculation, though, so there could be a lot of retail selling because they don't understand what they're invested in, but this would explain why there's such a big price drop. But keep in mind, if we look at history, a big price decline when the company's fundamentals are strong usually will be rebounded by a large price increase. So hopefully that was helpful. But yeah, let me know in the comments if you know any more about this, or if you can add any color, that would be great. On to some more positive news, though, as top federal financial regulator slams Congress over cannabis inaction and calls for interagency banking work group. This is a big deal. A board member and former chairman of the Federal National Credit Union Administration is sharply criticizing Congress for failing to reform cannabis laws, and he announced on Thursday that he will be taking steps to push lawmakers to enact policy changes to help financial institutions and stakeholders caught in the federal-state cannabis conundrum. NCAU's Rodney Hood said at the PBC conference that he's concerned that the legal and regulatory infrastructure surrounding the cannabis industry is not evolving quickly enough, and congressional inaction is largely to blame. He also said that he feels legalization at the federal level is an inevitability. That's a pretty big statement. Now, let me be clear where I stand, he said. According to his remarks as prepared for delivery that were obtained by Cannabis Moment, it is time for federal action to clarify and harmonize the laws and regulations surrounding the state legal cannabis industry and cannabis-related businesses so that this industry can take part in the legitimate financial services industry. That is a bold statement, which I completely agree with, but for the fact that a top federal financial regulator is saying that should carry a lot more weight. And so let me scroll down because he just adds some good color down here as well. The problem is not with the financial institutions themselves. Many of them would be happy to provide services to the industry, but they're unsure of how to proceed, given the limited FinCEN guidance, or that fear of federal prosecution, Hood said, referring to an Obama-era memo that laid out how banks can serve cannabis businesses. We have this promising industry that's developing and growing rapidly, yet no way for the people who work in the industry to conduct the most fundamental business operation through legitimate financial channels. That is, frankly, an untenable situation. And here's a basic reality. As a rule, regulators really don't like to get out too far ahead of the policy process. We always seek to respect the existing statutes and to defer to Congress as the policy-making arm of the government. However, there are times when an independent regulator in the executive branch needs to step forward and provide leadership, or at least nudge things along, and I believe that's the case today with cannabis in the financial services industry, and according to him, he plans on trying to nudge this along. So that's very positive, especially amidst all of the blood that we were seeing on the charts in the short term. When we think back to a few weeks when a court justice threw that cannabis case out and said, well, we might be reclassifying cannabis anyways, and then we hear this from a federal financial regulator, it seems to me that the writing is on the wall. On to some cannabis sales. Maine cannabis sales set another new record as sales of adult-use cannabis topped 10 million in August for the first time. And so the Maine Office of Cannabis Policy reports that there were about 134,000 transactions in August for 10.2 million in sales. That generated 1 million in sales tax revenue. Sales have surged this summer, jumping from just under 6.5 million in June For a 3-month period of June to August, sales totaled more than 26 million. If we take a look, June sales were 6.4, July sales were 9.4, and August sales are 10.2. As adult use cannabis sales began October 9th, 2020, when there were 6 active licenses in the state. The first month included 21,194 transactions for a total of about 1.4 million in revenue. And as at the end of August 2021, there were 53 active retail store licenses with 183 others in the application process. So that looks like progress to me. Great job, Maine, leading the way by example. If we look at another one, this one's from Cannabis News and Due Diligence, so thank you for sharing this. Colorado reports an 8% increase in cannabis sales month over month. Adult use, 168 million for July compared to 153 million in June. And this is the most mature cannabis market, like 7 years in. And medical for 35 million for July, up 1%. So again, we can see sales crushing it in Colorado, the most mature market. So good to see sales growth still strong, 8% month over month. That's hard to see in any other industry over time. Then we jump over to the Office of Medical Cannabis Use, looking at the amount of patients added over the last week, which is a difference of 2,429 patients from last week. So Florida is continuing to recruit those with the best medicine we have on the planet. And there were no weekly highlights to show for this past week. However, there was a ton of cannabis sold in the form of milligrams of THC, milligrams of CBD, and ounces of smokable flower, as this is a record for Trulieve, 41,500 ounces, and a ton of cannabis is 32,000 ounces. And worth noting here, looks like Harvest is actually picking up a bit of market share too, and increasing their spot on this list. So regardless, a lot of good companies here. Again, if you want to check, you can take the brand, who owns the brand this in Florida. But as we can see, sales continue to be strong, as we typically do see them month over month, which is great. While TLRY holders approve boost in authorized shares. This is a great relevant, especially gift from Todd. Get in, loser, we're going shopping. So now TLRY can go shopping for another asset in the US if they wish to do so. And then he adds a bit of light from Jeffries here that I want to add. From TLRY, expect to see more deals in the U.S. near term. As we've written many times over recent months, it is the U.S. and U.S. exposure optionality that will be key for any material re-rating over the next 12 to 24 months. While TLRY made the first of such moves recently when it acquired optionality in MedMen converts, and with a clear path to control, a barrier to the size and pace of further deals was a cap on the number of authorized shares. Today's vote therefore removed that barrier, and we would expect to see TLRY do several more U.S. deals over the near term, with TLRY targeting $1.15 billion in U.S. sales by full year 2024. In order to hit the bottom end of this, we think TLRY needs to be acquiring value share right now, full year 2022, of at least 4% or sales of roughly $600 million. With MedMen expected full year 2022 sales of $180 million, this leaves another $420 million for them to pick up in the U.S. We think the most likely route TLRY will take will be a few single state operators in key states. But this could be a big deal because if TLRY starts to do more M&A, that could spark the trend change that we've been looking for in this industry, or at least help draw more attention in the meantime as we see more developments unfold. While Weed Street 420 offers this, so thank you for sharing this, Weed Street 420, Verano insiders bought over $1 million worth of shares today. So if that's also not a bullish sign, when insiders of a company are buying more shares in the open market when prices have fallen to ridiculous valuations, this is a sign of confidence for cannabis investors, so we love to see it. While Columbia Care celebrates the start of wholesale flower in Virginia. So the company announced the start of wholesale flower in Virginia tomorrow as of February 10th. These new products will be available at Columbia Care's Portsmouth dispensary and G-Leaf's Richmond dispensary under the Seed and Strain and G-Leaf brands, marking some of the first sales in the Commonwealth under the new whole flower program. Flower will also be available via home delivery and third-party retailers throughout the state. So keep in mind, Virginia is just a medical state as of right now. They don't have recreational, but they do plan to get that going hopefully sooner than later. But until recently, smokable flower sales were not permitted in Virginia at all. In advance of the anticipated change in regulation, which was announced in February 2021, Columbia Care and G-Leaf accelerated cultivation in their Portsmouth and Manchester facilities, which together total more than 145 square feet of cultivation and manufacturing capacity. So we're grateful for the Commonwealth of Virginia and the Board of Pharmacy for the opportunity to provide this critical medicine to patients in the form they've been asking for and in the brands they can trust. And as we've seen over time, people love flower, right? Because it just does the trick. And so, to prevent people from getting access to it when that's overall a great medicine is just really wrong. So great job, Columbia Care, for sharing this with us, and Virginia for helping lead the way as well through cannabis reform. Well, if we take a look, Arizona cannabis tax revenue exceeds $20 million in August, the state reports. As Arizona collected more than $20 million in medical and adult use cannabis tax revenue in August, data released by the state this week shows medical cannabis taxes were slightly higher at $6.3 million last month compared to $4.5 million collected from the recreational market, according to the Department of Revenue, while the state also took in an additional additional $9.5 million from cannabis excise tax. If we just take a look, overall cannabis tax revenue from January through August totaled $105 million, according to the data and Department of Revenue is reporting so far. So this is good because obviously if tax revenue is spent wisely, it can create better standards of living and better life for those living in Arizona. So this is, again, progress, states leading the way, reforming their laws and doing things that will help the citizens of those states. On to California, we see cannabis regulators issue new consolidated industry rules as the newly merged California Department of Cannabis Control, the DCC, on Wednesday released a 197-page draft. So if you wanted to grab the link, you can grab this link below and then grab this one if you wanted to read through it, of cannabis industry regulations, including allowing broader sales of branded merchandise and sharing product samples among those in the supply chain. So just for a quick run through of what this involves, the DCC is a brand new state agency in California created in July from the original framework of 3 separate bureaucracies that oversaw legal cannabis businesses in the state. Combining the regulations from the 3 former regulators was one of the new agency's first tasks. And so the new rules expected to be finalized and adopted around the end of the month. These are the highlights. New parameters for how industry trade sample sharing can work, allowing manufacturers, growers, and distributors to share product samples free of charge with others in the legal supply chain, while new and more narrowly tailored definitions for cannabis company owners and those who own a financial stake in the business, while allowing for more allowances for non-vertically integrated cannabis companies to sell branded merchandise from other licensed businesses. So these are positive change, and it seems like they're also trying to crack down on the illegal market in California, which will be big because they're trying, in an effort to do that, they're trying to make it more accessible for small growers to join the legal market. So that's very positive. Obviously, we're just going to see how this unfolds over time. But like cannabis, it's an ongoing situation. It doesn't end. It just keeps growing. And so that's why you got to adjust your plan to it, right? But the intention of the DCC is to have more efforts at regulation through the regular rulemaking process to continue to streamline this. This is not the end. So it's very worth highlighting. But this is the largest cannabis market in the world. So anything that can help this market, remove the illicit and add to the legal market is very positive in the long run. While we have some developments out of states, not developments, but just news that states are working towards reform for the 2022 ballot, which is, again, what we want to see or what we want to be hearing as well. Maryland lawmakers take the first step towards putting cannabis legalization on the 2022 ballot. Basically, the 10-member group, which was appointed by the House Speaker, will be looking at the issue from a variety of perspectives as lawmakers continue to pursue reform in the free state. It's not a very free state if you can't consume cannabis, sadly. But regardless, at Wednesday meeting, the panel talked about their plans to work over the next year, crafting legislation to implement a regulated cannabis market so it will be ready for the 2023 session if voters approve the legalization referendum next November, and I have no doubt that they will approve that. On to Minnesota, lawmakers poll showing growing support for cannabis legalization. So this is positive, though, as we see 58% of respondents for the 2021 House of Representatives State Fair poll said they favor cannabis legalization for adult use, and this is a modest increase compared to the Chamber's 2019 survey, which showed 56%. But regardless, any more than 50% is a majority in this instance. So those in Minnesota are becoming more friendly to the idea. I have no doubt that over time, once we see the 2022 votes, and they can do that, there will be more than 59 that end up voting yes. On to Nebraska, as activists submit 2 medical cannabis initiatives for 2022 ballot. Nebraska cannabis activists announced on Wednesday that they have turned in a pair of complementary initiatives to legalize medical cannabis that they hope to place on the state's 2022 ballot. The advocacy group Nebraskans for Medical Cannabis says it expects the Secretary of State's office to sign off on the language of the measures by the end of the month, after which point activists will be cleared to begin collecting the roughly 250,000 signatures required to qualify for each of the initiatives. They will have until July 7, 2022 to turn in these valid submissions, but get this is the group's second time pursuing the ballot for cannabis reform, because they already did this before 2020. While they collected enough signatures to qualify a medical cannabis legalization measure for the 2020 ballot, the state Supreme Court invalidated it. Again, imagine that though. They invalidated it because it violated the single subject rule for citizen initiative. So it's just too bad, but again, the status quo getting in the way, invalidating some effort, but that's okay. At least activists are pushing and they're going to get it right for 2022. And on to Rhode Island, lawmakers rally behind cannabis equity agenda as legalization talks continue for a special session. So not a whole lot of development here, but several lawmakers and progressive activists with Reclaim Rhode Island say, as currently drafted, the measures do not do enough to repair the harms of the war on drugs and promote social equity. So the organization held a press conference outside of the State House on Wednesday to draw attention to their reform agenda, with legislatures speaking in favor of tackling legalization comprehensively and quickly during a special session. So just to highlight, the important thing doing here is a special session. They don't have to be doing this, but they are. So that gives me a bit of hope, I imagine, for those in Rhode Island too, and that's obviously going to get politicians reelected if they do what the people want. That's the whole goal of politics, right? Lastly, though, some international news. Oh gosh, this website is just terrible, and man, I thought American media was bad, but the dailymail.co.uk, I'm sorry, Daily Mail, but you are selling out your UK citizens with this much advertisement. It's just disgusting. Anyways, I'll get to the story. Growing your own cannabis is now legalized in Italy. So Italy is set to allow a small-scale cultivation of cannabis plants at home after reform was approved by the lower house's Justice Committee on Wednesday. The reform decriminalizes the growth of up to 4 plants at home. However, it also increases the penalties for crimes linked to the trafficking and dealing of cannabis, with the maximum sentence increasing from 6 to 10 years. And so just wanted to add, the reform comes nearly 2 years after a landmark decision from Italy's Supreme Court in 2019 that ruled small-scale domestic cultivation of cannabis was legal. So it's a great development to see that, the citizens of Italy are getting some of their freedoms back and being able to grow from home. So hopefully we can see more developed from this, and they will potentially ease more of their regulations. Then as we move over to this High Times article, great unexpected news out of Switzerland is Swiss doctors to prescribe cannabis without exceptional authorization. And there's a not-so-quiet revolution going on in Switzerland at the moment. The country is getting ready for what is likely to be Europe's most disruptive recreational trial. Love to hear that. Let's find out more. So if we go down here, and here's the most unusual, if not cynical, twist of all. I don't know why this is cynical in any way. But within several months, Switzerland will also begin a unique recreational trial. Namely, pharmacies will be able to sell high THC products to anyone who has the money to pay for them, as long as they're over 21. So they're trying legalization out. Good job, Switzerland. And I'm sure you're going to find a lot sooner than later that just like Canada or legal US states, it obviously provides more benefits than harms. And obviously it's with the data that we can say that now. But that said, the experiment is certainly taking place at an interesting time just across the border. At the recent ICBC in Berlin, one of the most avidly attended panels was the discussion by federal German politicians of which way the cannabis legalization winds will blow as a result of the late September election, which is going to be held in Germany on September 26th. So I love this foreshadowing. This gets me excited for the next 6 months to 12 months to see how this unfolds. All this really means is Switzerland is trying a legal framework out, so hope that goes well. I know it will. On to this last one from RoojiKoomar on Twitter. Just another great visual. Here's a look at a couple US MSOs by market cap and trailing 12-month sales with price to sales ratios. We see Curaleaf, Green Thumb, and Verano trading around the same valuation, while Trulieve, Cresco Labs, and Columbia Care are trading around the same valuation, and then Harborside, I don't know which company this stands for, both trading under 2.0 trailing 12-month price to sales. But so if we take a look, and so from my understanding, it stands for market cap non-diluted, and then market cap fully diluted, which just means outstanding shares, and then outstanding shares plus authorized shares that they have available that they can use. And then we've got the sales for the trailing 12 months, the last 12 months of sales, and the price to sales compared to the fully diluted market cap. So ultimately, if you read this book and you use it effectively, you do learn that the lower the company's share prices fall, meaning their market caps or valuations, the cheaper the companies are if they're growing their sales strongly and they have, very solid fundamentals overall. So, although we are envious of people that can come in to buy now, and, I do apologize if it was my enthusiasm that got you to start buying earlier on in the year, because I honestly believe that with Schumer coming in, if I was Schumer, I'd get safe for a vote, I would get the ball rolling, but no, that's just not how politics works, and, that's my fault, but ultimately, I'm not giving up, and I'm going to be here every week until this does happen, relaying the news, because it just keeps coming. So just want to remind you to zoom out, though, and think in the big picture that we really are right here. So ultimately, if you believe in this, and especially if we compare that these were the February highs for MSOs, and then these were actually the all-time highs for overall US MSOs in 2019 when they were making a fraction of what they were making in February, right? So again, if this is the time to accumulate and add if you can. And while history doesn't exactly repeat, I do think it rhymes, and while past performance is also not indicative of future results, all I can say is this is where I really believe we are, and that is why I've put my money where my mouth is, and I will continue to relay the news twice a week until that light switch is flipped, and then we head up to the moon. So that is it for today's episode, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I really hope you got some value out of it. What do you think of the stories? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or concerns, or at least try to provide some perspective as to why you believe we're also in the same position, because it takes calm, cool, and educated investors to hold through these times, especially to accumulate in order to see the returns in the future. So if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I will catch you on Wednesday for a midweek update. Have a great weekend, everybody.